Hello. Yeah, this is pretty wild, man. Feel like you're outside? All right. We got to use these mics today. We're doing classroom captures, so this will be filmed, and everybody that's not here, like you lucky people, can watch it on Target Solutions when it's put on there. Thank you, Alan, for doing that. All right, good morning. This is our annual core. Who has not taken core before? Ooh, several. So core, as you guys all know, we're going to learn some. Derek's going to teach us from EH&S about water quality, bloodborne pathogens, HAZCOM or hazardous chemical stuff, and then asbestos awareness. My name's Chris Cox. I'm your safety officer, and most of you know me. After this is done, after Derek does his part, then we also have a young lady from Peak Form, our new medical provider, coming, and she's going to do a bit on shoulder, some good stretches. What do we do with our shoulders? The design of our shoulder, what we should and shouldn't be doing, and she'll be going over that. So, also there's a supposed to bring up that we have the mentor program. We'll be starting again on August 15th. For any of you that want to join the mentor program or maybe be a mentor, get with Kelsey Draper sometime before that, but there'll be a email coming out to remind everybody. But be thinking about that. It's a pretty good program. I've been in it a long time. Derek's been in it. It's pretty good. Right before I turn it over to Derek, everybody got their cell phone? Everybody got it on vibrate or off? If you got a call, it's cool. Go answer it, but just so it ain't going off in the middle of the presentations. 1, 2, 3, vibrate, right? All right. We got Derek Hayes from EH&S. He's going to take over from here. Yay.
Is that good? There. All right. Good morning. Everyone psyched to be here? Would you lie to me? I would expect nothing less. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Derek Hayes. I'm the chemical safety officer for the campus, and I guess my role has morphed over the years. But I used to be the campus trainer, so I'm still stuck doing this. So who has had core training before? Most people. All right, so you guys are experts, right? Yeah? Tom's an expert? Well, every year I say the same thing. I think this is our 10th year doing this, okay? And every year I have the same lamentation where I say, it's the same topic, so it gets harder and harder for me every year to write this in some way that is remotely interesting to you guys. So what I did this year was I tried to take it and take out some of the information and put in questions that I hoped you guys would answer. So I did this class, when was it, last Thursday afternoon for the afternoon crew. It's a much smaller group. And so I'd come up to these questions in the slides. I'm like, all right, you guys have all had this for 10 years. What's the answer? And it was just crickets. Nothing. No one would offer anything. I'm like, come on, I'm sure someone knows this, and nothing. So finally I just had to jump on it and just answer all the questions myself. So it was kind of like me standing up here talking to myself sitting out there, which was kind of a drag. You guys are going to help me out today, right? Yeah, sure, Derek, whatever. All right. That was me trying to get you on my side. You see that? Not anyone can do that. That's a skill. All right, so like Chris said, today we're going to talk about bloodborne pathogens. Not much has changed in the world of bloodborne pathogens, as you may imagine. Some other things have happened on campus since we talked last, so we can discuss some of those. I don't know why it keeps blinking like that. Asbestos awareness, not much has changed there. Water quality, not much has changed there. We have our floating topic this year. I've chosen chemical hazards. I think last year we did SDSs, and I'm still available to come to shops and do specific SDS training if people have questions on individual chemicals, like, hey, I work with this methylethylophil thing. How bad is this for me? You know, I'm happy to, I've come to a few shops and talked about specific chemicals for them. So I'm still available to do that. If anyone wants that, let Chris know, let me know. I'm happy to come out and do that. So let's talk about bloodborne pathogens to kick it off. So the two we're concerned about are HIV and hepatitis B, right? HIV, human immunodeficiency virus, causes AIDS, and hepatitis B, okay? These are the two we're concerned about from an occupational perspective. Of course, there's lots of other things out there that could make us sick, make us ill. OSHA focuses on these two. I'm not entirely sure why they focus on these two, probably because they're incurable. Do you know, by any chance, why they just picked these two?
I think they're the most commonly transmitted.
Okay, most commonly transmitted, and you can't treat either one either, so. So these are considered infectious. Every year we say this: blood, semen, vaginal secretion, spinal fluid, pleural fluid, peritoneal, pericardial. That's the fluid around your heart. And every year I make the joke, if we have a pericardial fluid spill, we probably have a lot bigger problems than the bloodborne pathogens there. Someone's broken in half. Dental saliva. Why dental saliva? Blood. Because they poke your gums with sharp metal things, right? And you bleed. And then they yell at you, right? Or any fluid visibly contaminated with blood. These are not considered infectious. Okay, vomit, feces, urine, sweat, nasal discharge, tears, they're all still gross. Can these things make you sick? Sure, but they won't harbor, or they're not likely, unless they're contaminated with blood, they are not likely to harbor hepatitis B, HIV, things like that. Those viruses don't remain viable in that medium, okay? So a lot of times on campus, we run into this stuff, unfortunately, right? So in meetings and things, we talk about how should we handle this. From an OSHA perspective, they're not considered infectious, but we're still going to treat them the same way if we are going to deal with them. Okay. Like I said, we don't discriminate. Pretty much anything that spills, we're going to use the same procedure. This was happening last week, too, and I don't know why it's happening.
There's not good internet in this room. That's probably what it is.
No, it's plugged in.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm just using this as a remote. Isn't that cool? Yeah, no, it's hard plugged in. I don't know. Anyway, so from blood to porta potties, here you see a picture of one of our intrepid employees in the middle of the night after a football game, I think, and someone had the idea to tip over the porta potty. These are the best and brightest we have here, you know. So I think what he was doing there is waiting for a contractor to show up and clean it up and basically keep the students from walking through it, riding through it, skateboarding through it, you know, because we have the best and brightest. And we have to keep them from walking through puddles of poop. So anything we run across, we're going to treat the same way. So let's talk about these two viruses first. HIV can lead to AIDS. It's a very fragile virus. How long does it last outside the body? Yeah, not long at all. Seconds, maybe a minute, okay? Anything on exposure to air, UV, anything like that's going to kill it. It doesn't last very long. It's a really fragile virus, fortunately, okay? Hepatitis B affects the liver. It's 100 times more infectious than HIV. Why is that? There's a couple reasons. Say that again? It lives outside the body. For how long? A long time. How, what? 7 days, up to a week. Yeah, that's the party line, right? It can live in dry blood up to a week outside the body. So it can remain, unlike the HIV virus, which dies right away. This can last up to a week in dry blood, so we can have someone who is infected, bleed on something, a week later we come by and we're cleaning it up, and that virus is still viable. There's seats down here if you guys want to come in. I know you're late and... You're more than welcome to stand there too. There's another reason that hepatitis B can be considered more infectious. So that's one big one. You remember the other fact about it? It's kind of odd. It can go dormant. Yep, and that's what allows it to stay viable. There's one more weird kind of insidious thing about hepatitis that, I don't know if you remember. I guess not. Can you have hepatitis B, or can you be infected with hepatitis B and be asymptomatic? Yes. That's what I'm after, right? So certain people can become infected with hepatitis B, never show any symptoms, okay, for their entire lives. So they'll have, I was only kidding, you didn't have to come down. So they can spend their whole lives having hepatitis B, never know it. So, if you knew you had hepatitis B and you were under treatment for it, you might be apt to be more careful. You might have to say something if there is an issue. But people can be asymptomatic carriers, which makes it even that much more sneaky. So the good news is hepatitis B is vaccine preventable. So if you're in this room, you are considered an at-risk employee, and therefore you can get the hepatitis B vaccine if you so choose. Who's gotten it? Not many. How long is it good for? They say, 10 years. Give or take. And then you go to the doctor, they'll run a test to see if you still show the antibodies. If you don't, they will give you a booster shot. The initial shot is 3 shots over a 6-month period. Where are we going for that now, Chris? Where are we going for that now?
Right now, we're still going to, now it's U.S. Healthware / Concentra, but peak form will be coming on board where we can go.
Okay, so if you want the vaccine, speak to Chris, talk to your supervisor. We can get you in there and start that process to get you vaccinated. If you fear that you've suffered an exposure to a potential infectious body fluid, we recommend that you start the hepatitis B series at that point, because studies have shown that if you were exposed to hepatitis B, starting that process can stave off a potential infection. So if you do have concerns about that, we recommend, if you haven't gotten the vaccine, go ahead and start it then as soon as possible. So speaking of that, how would you be exposed to this stuff? So we're talking about all these fluids, blood, and things like that could be infectious. How do you get exposed to it? How do you get sick from this stuff?
Coughing?
Coughing? Potentially. Cleaning it up? How does it get in you?
Saliva, tear ducts.
Yeah, okay. Open wounds.
Not washing your hands.
Yep, for sure. Getting it in your mouth, eyes, nose, mucous membranes. Okay. So, universal precaution is an OSHA term. Basically what that means is regardless of what we're dealing with, we're going to treat it as though it's potentially infectious. Anything we come across, we're going to assume that it has those viruses present, and we're going to handle it as such, right? That's pretty easy to do. I say this every year. If I were charged with cleaning up a blood spill, which happens from time to time, especially large ones here on this campus, it's really easy for me to protect myself than to say like, oh, this is gross, I don't want to deal with this, I don't want this on me. But when universal precautions, I think you have to mentally check yourself, is if you're working with someone that you know and you like, and they get hurt, let's say, right? So if Chris and I are working together, he gets hurt, I'm going to want to help him. I'm going to want to help him get bandaged or clean or whatever I need to do, and it wouldn't necessarily occur to me if someone who was close to me to protect myself from them, putting on gloves and things like that to try to help those people out. But in that case, you really should. If it's wet and not yours, wear gloves. All right, so the steps to cleaning up a spill of this kind. So proper PPE, personal protective equipment, is the number one thing. And what is the proper personal protective equipment for us? Gloves, of course. Glasses. Those are the biggies, right? Gloves and glasses. And engineering controls is a fancy EH&S way of saying keep yourself away from the stuff, using dustpans, using mops, using brooms, anything to keep you from actually coming in contact with the stuff. Despite the fact that we're wearing PPE, we don't want to touch it. PPE is a last line of defense. It's there for our protection, but it's not there for us to dive in and start manhandling this stuff. So staying as far away from it as possible and using tools is basically what engineering controls means in this situation. So bleach or other microbicide, we talked about this. Bleach is really effective, it's really inexpensive, and for a lot of us here on campus, we're not allowed to have it, right? because it wrecks clothes and it's really caustic and it's bad for your eyes and it wrecks carpet, things like that. But if you have bleach, 10-to-1 solution of bleach is perfectly acceptable for this. The other microbicides that we have in dorms and in buildings that Environmental Services uses are very effective. They're just as effective as bleach. They just happen to be more expensive. So those will work. And what I recommend at this point, if we do have a spill, to keep it from splashing around, to keep it from getting bigger, is I like to cover it with paper towels, cover the spill, and then pour the bleach or microbicide over that spill. And then let it sit. Okay, contact time, good 15 minutes. Let it soak in. Let it do its job. Let it render those viruses or whatever else is in there to be non-viable. Okay? And once that's done, that just becomes trash. You can just throw that stuff away. It's not a biohazard anymore because we've killed everything. And then all that's left to do is decontaminate anything that's non-porous. Anything that's porous, it could still be contaminated. Probably want to throw that away. If for no other reason, then it's just kind of gross. Okay? But if it's a porous material that you can decon using that microbicide or bleach, go ahead and do that. And we're ready for the next one. It's a pretty simple process. It's just bearing in mind and doing it in the right order and wearing the right stuff. So some events on campus that have happened, we talked about these before. This was over in biotech. There was a researcher who had a reaction going on, and I'm going to get go into a seizure. And the vessel exploded and cut his neck, and he bled all over the floor. And EH&S was called in to clean this one up. It's tricky on those modeled floors like that to find the blood spots. This is another one of him. That's the bench top after it happened. He went to go wash the chemical out of his face and eyes, and then he looked down on the bench top and he realized that he was bleeding pretty profusely because it had cut his neck open. This one was the west side of engineering. So there's a railing there now, and there was a prospective student who was sitting on this ledge right here, just kind of sitting. It's about 2.5, 3 feet off the ground. I don't think it meets code now, but he was sitting on it and he went over backwards and he fell off. It's about a 12-foot drop, and there was a lot of blood when he hit. And what happened was there was a lot of panic, and someone, I think, from what I've heard, this is all anecdotally, someone asked Environmental Services in engineering to clean it up. Okay, and it was way too big for that. EH&S we were never told about it until after the fact. This is something that we don't think that FactMan should be dealing with. This is an EH&S issue all the way. So if someone asks you to do something like that, to clean something up, you should feel free to say no, and call us, because we're on call 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. We'll always have someone here who's ready to come deal with stuff. We had another one. Anyone remember any other ones? There was, last winter, someone jumped off the parking garage. Yeah, over by grounds. Yeah. It was first thing in the morning. I came in and I got out of my car, and I can't remember who it was. Someone from grounds grabbed me, and they're like, "Dude, you're not going to believe this." And it was a student who had jumped off the parking garage, and it was finals time, very stressful. He survived, and he's pretty messed up. But there was a fairly decent amount of blood from that. And then the one that made the news was that guy. I'm sure you all heard about it. The guy in the Champion Center, the guy that showed up with the machete. Yeah, and that was kind of an eye opener for me, because after that all happened, if you don't know what happened, there was a guy and he broke in with a machete to do something with the machete, I guess, and the cops ended up shooting him. And so after everything was taken away, we went in to help do cleanup, and we got a contractor to come in. It was in a concrete stairwell, and despite the fact that it's a brand new building, concrete cracks, right? And it was really, really difficult to get all of that out of there because it seeped down into stuff, and it was just... So yeah, those are the fun ones that have happened on campus recently. So my point with all these is you guys should not be cleaning these up. If you're asked to do it, the answer is no, but you can help by stopping the spread of the contaminant if possible and securing the area. like the picture, the porta potty, keeping people walking through it, just keeping the area of contamination as small as possible is really helpful. Keeping people out of it, just being present to help manage the scene is super helpful. And then just call EH&S or call the police. You know, the police will contact us if they know that we need to be part of something. So, homeless camps. This has come up recently. This is probably more for grounds, I guess, or if someone winds up, if there's something winds up on campus like this. I was in a meeting and we were talking about bloodborne pathogens and what we might find in homeless camps and needles and drugs and things like that. And I said, yeah, that falls under the purview of EH&S, so we should be called in to assist with that stuff. And then finally, someone said, well, what about like if they have a bathroom in their camp, you know, and there's feces or fecal matter or something like that. And I had to go back in my brain and figure out what decision I made in life that wound up with me in a meeting talking about poop in the woods. And could I go back and change that? So if you remember from the beginning, fecal matter was considered non-infectious and deer's poop in the woods. So we came up with a slogan, if it's brown, let it be. Yeah, if it's I couldn't come up with a good rhyme for it. So we're not gonna clean that stuff up is the short of it. We'll let nature deal with it. Okay. I don't know if you remember this picture. I put this picture, so these are just kind of some fun pictures. Any questions on bloodborne pathogens before I move on? Not a lot's changed there. So for those of you who don't know, one of the jobs of EH&S is to pick up hazardous waste on campus, and in order to pick up hazardous waste, people have to fill out tags, and they send the tag through campus mail to our hazardous waste group, and they go pick up the material. And this is just a picture of a tag that came through campus mail to us. So someone had that, spilled God knows what all over it, and was saying, okay, well, my thing is full, I'm going to send this into EH&S, and tore that off, looked at it, and went, yeah, I'm going to throw this in campus mail. Is that not screaming, come inspect me? Okay. So chemical hazards, we're going to talk about this real quick. So the 4 basic types of chemical hazards. So we've talked about this stuff before, and last year we talked about SDSs, and because every time you do a hazard communication training, hazard communication is something required by OSHA. It's called the Right to Know Act. You have the right to know the hazards of anything that you're going to be coming in contact with, being asked to use, anything like that. And HazCom training has always been, in my career, it's always been the same. Someone sits me down, gives me a material safety data sheet for a given material and says, read it. And I sit there and I read this SDS for methylethyl, and they say, you understand? And I go, I don't know, I guess. And they're like, here, sign this, you're trained, go. You know? And I'm like, I don't know anything about this stuff. So this is just my continued attempt to start defining some of the terms that we see in SDSs and MSDSs and things like that. So first, the 4 basic types, the 4 food groups of hazardous materials. Everything can be broken down into one of these 4 in one way or another. Basically, toxic is a catch-all, you'll see. We'll talk about these different hazards real quick. So flammable materials. The lion's share of the hazardous materials here on campus are considered flammable. What 3 things, so here's, that's a picture of the fire triangle. What 3 things do you need to have a fire? Oxygen, that's 1.
Fuel.
Oxygen, fuel, and heat or ignition. Cool. Okay. So we need those 3 things to have a fire. So what? It's pretty rudimentary, right? Why is that a good thing to know? You remove one, you put out the fire, or even better, prevent it from happening in the first place, right? Yeah. You take one of those away. You know, in this case, you know, what do you think we typically take away or try to take away? Ignition. Yeah. Ignition sources. Get rid of those, especially if you come to EH&S, if you come to our waste room, if you've ever been to our waste room, all the lighting is called intrinsically safe, which means it won't ever cause a fire. You know, it's really hard to take away the fuel because we have this stuff here on campus, and it's really hard to take away oxygen because we need it. You know, I've been to places where there are rooms that have a lot of flammable material, and if they have sensors all around, and if it senses a spark, the door's shut and it floods with halon. So if you're in there, you're dead too. So they were like, don't take your cell phone, because if you take a picture with a cell phone with a flash, it thinks it's a spark and it kills you. So the guy was giving me a tour. He said, do you have a cell phone with you? I said, well, yeah, I'm a human in 2000, you know. And he's like, don't take it out of your pocket. I'm like, okay. That was at a huge printing press. So some other definitions, inflammable, another important aspect of how it's defined. There are various agencies that define what flammable is. OSHA does, the EPA does, the Department of Transportation does, NIOSH does, all these different groups, and basically they all use the same measurement, although the measurement is not always the same value. So flash point is defined as the lowest temperature where a liquid will give off enough vapor to form an explosive mixture with air, potentially. Okay, so we have to heat something up to its flash point in order for it to ignite. The definition that most agencies use is 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Anything with a flash point of 140 degrees or below is considered flammable. Why 140? I've heard rumors. I don't know. I've heard it's the average temperature of asphalt in the summer. I don't know, maybe. All right, corrosive materials. Acids and bases, right? Here we have our pH scale. Before I get into it, I love to ask, has anyone ever been burned by an acid or a base? Which one?
Muriatic.
Muriatic acid, what did it feel like?
Hurts.
Hurts. You heard it here. Where was it? On your arms, hands?
Yeah, pool.
Oh, pool chemicals? Okay. Anybody been burned by a base? A little different. A little different. I asked this question. It's a really stupid question. If you could choose to be burned by an acid or a base, which would you choose?
Acid.
Acid. Everyone agree? Because you can neutralize it? Okay, well I have some over here. I'm kidding. I'm not going to burn anybody with it. Yeah, acid you can neutralize quickly. It has great warning properties, as you can attest, right? It gets on your skin, you feel it right away. Bases will do a lot of damage, but they do it more slowly. They can kill the nerve cells while they're doing it, and they kind of react with your subcutaneous fat. They turn you into soap, basically, is what it's doing. That's what a soap is fat in the base. So base burns can be really, really dangerous, even more so than acid. So as we get closer to zero, what is it? Acid. Okay, and higher up towards 14 are our bases. And that's a logarithmic scale. So every time you go down a point or up a point in the pH scale, it's 10 times the strength. So if you go towards the acid end down from, so the middle is 7, that's pure water. You go down to like 4.5, 5, something like that, that'd be orange juice, you know. As you get down into 2, 1.5, 1, that's when you get into muriatic acid, nitric acids, and all those things that can cause a lot of damage. Same on the base side. As you go up to 10s and things like that, you have bicarb, sodium bicarb, baking soda, and stuff till you get up to your hydroxides and lye and stuff like that on the high end of the pH scale. Concrete, yeah. Concrete's corrosive. It's really strong base. Reactive hazards, particular concern for us because even being, a chemist, as it were, we can't know, or in my brain, I don't know exactly what every reaction is going to produce. So a big thing for us is trying to mitigate the potential for that reaction. So what things mixing together are going to cause. Some of the things that can happen are exothermic. I know a couple years ago in this room we did an exothermic reaction just to show it. It was toilet bowl cleaner and Drano, and how hot that could get just with an ounce each. Toxic gas can be released. We have such nasty stuff here on campus. The gas chamber is a toxic gas reaction. Cyanide and acid. Fire without ignition, shock-sensitive materials, polymerization, that's just small molecules becoming larger molecules. That can be a hazard, especially if it's confined. So here we have, hang on. I know I showed this last year. I think I showed it last year. But so this is just a 1-minute video of, so about twice a year on campus, we run into enough goofy stuff that could be potentially shock sensitive, potentially explosive. There are things that as they age, they can become unstable, and we can't ship them off campus. We don't want to handle them. We don't want to deal with them. So what we do is we get a permit from the state. The bomb squad comes in first thing in the morning and puts the stuff in a truck that's designed to carry this stuff and drives it up to North Boulder. Behind the Gateway Fun Park, there's a state police shooting range. And what they do is you'll see, we had some cylinders that were unlabeled. We didn't know what was in them. So they use a laser-guided shotgun, and they just shoot them. And there's a bunch of shock-sensitive flammable material, potentially shock-sensitive, and they put it down in a well, and they initiate it with some det cord. So you'll see what that looks like. And of course the sound doesn't work. Hang on. Ugh. Try it again. Okay. Huh? I'm just using it as a remote. Yeah. So this one has, you can see the blue one in the front in the slow-mo. As it comes down, you can see the hole in the blue one. It's just, they just use like a big slug. They seem to really enjoy this. So all that stuff's in that well. Ah. It'll happen again. You like the flower next to the flame? It's pretty artistic, I think. It's like, you didn't think you're going to get today, did you? Okay, so toxic, last one. Pretty much everything is toxic at some dosage. The dose makes the poison, right? And anything that pretty much that doesn't fall into flammable, reactive, or corrosive can be, and probably in some ways, considered toxic. Different types of toxic hazards are irritants. Irritants are anything that will irritate skin, mucous membranes, eyes, nose, lungs, things like that. Asphyxiant is anything that can suffocate us. So there's two basic types of asphyxiants. And these are all terms you'll see in SDSs. That's why I'm bothering to go over them. A chemical asphyxiant is an asphyxiant that prevents your body from absorbing oxygen, like cyanide or carbon monoxide. Okay, there's still plenty of oxygen in the air. Your body is just incapable of absorbing it because you're being exposed to this material. A physical asphyxiant is nitrogen or water. You know, it's something that displaces oxygen out of a space. That's why you'll notice around campus we have distribution folks who go around and deliver liquid nitrogen containers. Those big doers, you know. And liquid nitrogen has like a 600 or 700 to 1 expansion ratio if it were to spill. So it wouldn't take much to fill up an elevator and suffocate someone. So we have a policy on campus where they can't ride in the elevator with liquid nitrogen because it would be that's a simple asphyxiant that could do some pretty serious damage. Sensitizers are materials that you can be exposed to over time. Like on one exposure, you have no reaction whatsoever. Over time, your body can develop sensitivity to that, and one day you can be exposed to that material and out of nowhere have a really severe reaction. Some examples of that are latex gloves was a big one for a long time. People could develop a latex allergy over time. Sometimes bee stings are another one. You know, people always say, well, yeah, I get bee stings and I don't have any allergic reaction to that. And then they get stung by a bee and they go anaphylactic. So those are things that upon repeated exposure can cause you to become more sensitive. And systemic poisons are anything that will attack a system in our body, a target organ. most things do. Most things attack kidneys, liver, things like that, your waste processing organs in the body as you take these things in. Okay. Questions on chem hazards? Yeah.
We were in a building today, and the students are in their labs, and they're dealing with these chemicals, and they wear their gloves out in the hallway, and they start touching the doorknobs and stuff.
Awesome. All right. So what he said was that the students are in labs doing their practicals, I guess, and they're working with these chemicals with their gloves on, and they leave the lab, they go out into the hallway. I mean, they're probably going to the bathroom with them on, right? So, and then they come back and open doorknobs and stuff with those same gloves, and that's a huge no-no in laboratory settings. So, what building were you in?
Chemistry.
Crystal?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So every year I get invited to the chemistry department when all the new grad students come back. So I'll make a point of reminding them to not spread contaminants throughout the building. It's like screaming into a void, right? Like, please don't. Yeah.
That's the right.
Yeah. I mean, we have to keep them from walking through poop, so. Okay, so asbestos awareness, we'll rip through this. Hey, look, we're almost done. What is asbestos? It's a mineral. It's a rock. Yeah, naturally occurring rock. Where is it on campus? We'll go over. Everywhere. So see this one you guys remember. All right. What are the hazards and how should we deal with it? So first, what is it? It's a rock. And that's what it looks like when it comes out of the ground. Okay? It gets mined out of the ground. Libby, Montana was a huge asbestos mine, still is a huge asbestos mine. If you lived in Libby, Montana, you could get free asbestos. You could drive your car up and they would just load it up with asbestos. And people did. And they put it in their walls and they put it in their attics as insulation. They turned it in the soil to aerate it. So if you're looking for cheap vacation property, Libby, Montana is the place. So this right here is asbestos under a microscope. So you can see in this case it looks like little glass needles because that's essentially what it is. That's where, therein lies the hazard, right? The most common on campus, that's what it looks like when it comes out of the ground. That's what it looks like under a microscope. It's called chrysotile fiber. What they do is they would take that and mix it with plaster or cement or adhesive or texturing or anything like that. It's a great, great product to use for building materials because it doesn't react with anything, it doesn't burn, it's impervious to most chemicals. It's a fantastic building material. It just has this really nasty habit of giving us cancer. So we got rid of it. So where is it on campus? Walls, floors, ceiling tiles, pipe insulation, texture, adhesives, right? It's everywhere. It's in just about anything we can think of on campus. We have, in one building or another, we have found asbestos. So when is it hazardous? Most of the time, asbestos is not hazardous, or these asbestos-containing building materials are not hazardous. When it's hazardous is when it becomes friable, which is to say airborne. When the fibers are broken, they can get loose and get in the air, and we can inhale them. That's when asbestos becomes an issue. Okay? So yeah, there was a question, I already answered it. So again, that's what it looks like when it becomes friable, it gets airborne. You can't see it, smell it, taste it. It's not irritating. You don't know it's there. You know, so it can be a pretty insidious little thing. So here's, again, an example of how small it is. There's a penny with 2 to 3 grains of rice, 5 to 6 human hairs there, and in that little thing right by Abe's face is 20,000 asbestos fibers. Yeah, that would shut down a lot of campus. That little airborne, you know. To test for this stuff, we set up pumps that just suck air through, and we have to send the filters out to lab, and they count through, because you find if you do that, you find all sorts of dust and crap in the air, and they count through and they go, oh, that's asbestos, that's asbestos, that's asbestos. And at a certain amount, it's like, we got to shut down the building. So it doesn't take much. So the health hazards associated, asbestosis and lung cancer and mesothelioma, we'll talk about these. So asbestosis is a cancer caused by inhaling these fibers. So you have those little glass needles, if you will, and you inhale them down your trachea, it branches out into your lungs, and it branches and branches and branches till you get down to those little air sacs, the alveoli. Did I hit that by accident? I did. You see the little air sacs, that's where the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide and all that good stuff takes place. And it's not something you would feel. The asbestos causes little scarring, little damage to those little air sacs. And as those scars happen, cancer, I've heard it described as healing that just didn't stop when it was supposed to. That's kind of what it's doing, right? And that can lead to asbestosis, which is a cancer of that. The latency period from exposure to asbestosis, they say, is somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 years. It's a long time. But it's not like, you'd walk through an old building that had asbestos and then 40 years later you're going to get cancer. It's not, there's no hard, fast rules about how this works, but they say the latency period for this stuff is a long time. Mesothelioma, another type of cancer. It's similar in how you get it. You breathe in these fibers. Your lungs are covered by a pleura. It's called a pleural lining. And the asbestos gets in there and causes a plaque to form, and that can in turn heal itself crazily into a cancer. Mesothelioma is usually fatal within a year of diagnosis. It's like, okay, I'm thoroughly scared, Derek, now what? So how do you know if asbestos is present? You don't. We don't. We used to think we knew on campus where all the asbestos was, and we thought we knew where it wasn't, and we found it in places where we thought it didn't exist. So always assume it's there. When in doubt, contact H&S. The takeaway from this is not to disturb any building materials. Now, drilling a hole through a wall is disturbing a building material, especially if that has asbestos in it. You have just released asbestos into the air. It counts as an asbestos spill, and we have to deal with that. So anytime anything like that's going to happen, we have the new O&M program, which I'll explain in a second. So exempt buildings, this is something that we used to do. So what happened, the federal government in 1978 banned all use of using asbestos in building materials. In 1991, that rule was vacated. I have no idea why, probably money. People are still using it. So it's not technically illegal to put in building things anymore. Anything we do on campus, we spec not to use asbestos-containing building materials, but that's not to say it doesn't find its way in here. Coble and Munzinger are two examples where they're pretty new construction, and we've gone in and tested some various materials and found trace amounts of asbestos. So despite the fact that you're not supposed to use it. I can't remember. Did you remember? Yeah, it's like mud, drywall mud. Yeah. Because you can go to Home Depot right now and buy drywall mud, and on it says contains mineral fibers. Natural Canadian mineral fiber, which all sounds good. Canada's awesome. Labatt's and hockey. Natural fiber, that's good. It's asbestos. Don't get it. Don't buy it. Avoiding exposure is easy. Don't disturb it. Don't disturb building materials. And if you see something that has been disturbed or it looks suspect, whether it's from vibration or water intrusion, anything like that, call EH&S, let us know immediately. I think everyone knows this is standard practice. It's pretty easy when you see the ceiling at Mackey fall down onto the stairwell to know that we should probably call EH&S at this point. But if you see something that there's a flood or anything like that, the act of something flooding can degrade the building material to a point where it can release fibers, so we have to deal with that. So let us know. The new O&M program is instituted. I'm sure people in here have been through the O&M program. If you will be impacting asbestos-containing materials, sign up on the EH&S website. Basically what that does is we've taken a 16-hour training that is given out by the state, and they gave us permission to knock that down to about a 4-hour training. So anyone who's going to be impacting building materials on campus, and there's 4 that we can train to, it's walls, ceiling tiles, floor tiles, and window putty, window mastic, right? If you're going to be impacting any of those things, you go through the O&M program, and without having to bottleneck everything through EH&S to get approvals, people in FACMAN are trained to go do that safely by themselves. That's what the O&M, it stands for Operations and Maintenance. So it's not a loophole, but it's a way for us to ease up the restrictions of the state in order to do this work. So if you're in the O&M program, you know it. If you're going to be impacting this stuff, sign up. Tim Lockhart's our asbestos manager. I don't know if he teaches it still, but he'll be part of it. Okay, last little bit. That's about same as last week. Stormwater, real easy. So we have two systems on campus. We have our stormwater system, which collects stormwater and runoff, and it goes right into the creek, or it goes into the catch basins or catch ponds here on our campus. The only thing that's allowed in there is rain, snow, and some groundwater. That's it, nothing else. Nothing can go into those drains. Not mud, not concrete slurry from people cutting it, not some guy walking out of the rec center and pouring buckets of paint right into it. Right in front of EH&S too. Yeah. I'm like, what is this guy doing? I'm watching out my window. He's like, is that paint? It's paint. He's like, what's he doing with it? He's pouring it into the drain. Awesome. Everything else has to go to sanitary. The sanitary system are sinks, toilets, floor drains, things like that. That all goes out to 75th and kind of Valmont. That's where the Boulder Water Treatment Center is. Everything else goes out to them and they deal with it, and then they discharge it into the creek. So if you see anything, the reason we go over this, it's actually had a good effect, because people who've gone through this training have called us because they see something weird going on, or they see a construction site and it's raining, and here's a picture, like something like this, right? This is a downstream of a construction site. It's raining. The construction site is required to keep everything on site. They obviously didn't. You know, you have trucks going in and out, and they can track dirt and mud or whatever on the road, and it rains, and that goes in the storm drain. That's illegal. Like, we can get fined for that. I don't know if you remember when they were building the Champion Center, those trucks going in and out of Folsom, or up that Folsom Hill. You know, it was covered in mud. One day we had a nice downpour, and it all just poured down to the bridge, the Folsom Bridge over the creek, and it just poured right in. It looked like just latte going into the creek. And we got in trouble for that. So if you see something goofy, give us a call. You can be anonymous, just tell us where they are. We'll go try to catch them. The benefit for us is if we can catch something and if we can self-report, it's better for us than if someone's walking down the creek path and calls the state on us. Did it go off-site, basin map? So on campus we have, Varsity Pond is that pond that's just north of the grounds building. There's ponds in Kittredge. Those are there. Yes, they're pretty, and they help us if something is improperly discharged into the storm and it gets filtered through one of those. It sits and settles out. So that helps us before it goes off campus. What I'm saying is basically if it stays on campus, we don't have to report it. We're still safe. So they're useful in that way. So when in doubt, if you see something goofy, give us a shout. Let us know. Be like that dude. Look at it. Look at him. He's this intrepid guy calling EH&S to let us know something's wrong. And that's it. That's Core 2018. How about that? We're done. Yay.
While she's logging in, does anybody have any questions or concerns out there that you have for me while we're waiting for our guest speaker to get her stuff done? Yeah.
Well, if you've been doing this for 10 years, how do you get away with forgetting the donuts?
I didn't forget them. It's not a matter of that. Plus, I am old, so maybe I did forget. Who knows? 10 years older than I was, that's for sure. Who drives box trucks in here? Recycling crew. So we had an incident happen with the distribution center, the big tailgate that folds down off the back of the box trucks. There's a safety chain thing that holds that. One of those broke, and that thing said, came down. Nobody was standing under it. I haven't done the full review on that, so I can't give you all the specifics about it. However, I'm just giving you a warning to everybody that sees the box trucks, lift gates up. Don't stand under them. Don't, stand off to the side. Don't catch yourself anywhere near where those will come down and thump you. It's going to be a bad day. Are you ready? All right, so our guest speaker today is from Peak Form. It's our most recent medical provider so you guys have another choice of where you go for your medical. And she's going to speak to us about some body mechanics, mainly shoulder. So I want you guys to give your undivided attention to Holly Jones. This will clip if you wanted to. And then this clips on.
All right. How's that, guys? You hear me? Not used to being mic'd. Okay. So I'm Holly Jones. I'm a physical therapist. I work right here in South Boulder at Peak Form, and I'm here to talk to you about the Boulder shoulder today. I'm very excited. I treat about half of my patient population is shoulder dysfunction, shoulder pain, post-op shoulder patients, because we're such an active community. So I see this a lot, and I really like it. So some objectives today. We're going to just describe the anatomy of the shoulder complex. We're going to provide some signs and symptoms of dysfunction that you guys should look out for. Be aware if you have them and when to go see a medical provider. We're going to list the most common musculoskeletal diagnoses, so what I see walking in my clinic, especially from workers' comp point of view, and then discuss lifetime shoulder health and provide just a framework for a strength and mobility program if you're not already doing something. So the shoulder complex is actually made up of 4 joints. Most people think of the glenohumeral joint, this ball and socket, as the shoulder, but there's also the sternoclavicular joint, the acromioclavicular joint, and the scapulothoracic joint. So all of those 4 joints have to work together, synchronized perfectly in order for you guys to do your jobs every day, what you do pain-free and without injury. So the names are not important, but I did want to just give you an idea about how much has to work well for you to be able to lift your arms up over your head, lift heavy equipment, do those repetitive motion tasks with your arms. It's also the joint that has the greatest degrees of freedom in the body, so you can move it the most of any other joint in your body. And with that, great mobility comes great responsibility. So the shoulder's strength is its mobility, right? How you can move, how you can bend, position yourself, but its biggest weakness is stabilization. So if you're not doing anything strength-wise to train your back, your shoulders, if you want a long and lengthy career in any kind of position that is going to demand that you use your shoulders, that you put your arms over your head, you're going to put yourself in a bad position in the long run if you're not doing preventative, exercise and making sure that everything's feeling and working well. I think that this little comic is funny because I'm a physical therapist, so your x-ray showed a worn out shoulder, but we fixed it in Photoshop. If only it was that easy. If you get to the point where you need imaging done, you need x-rays because you have such bad shoulder pain, chances are you've left it go on too long. I'm really here today to talk to you about if you have shoulder pain going on, get in to see a physical therapist or your primary care physician right away. Don't let it linger because it's something that most of the time doesn't go away and only kind of progressively gets worse. So what you should be able to do with your shoulder is flex 180 degrees all the way up over your head. You should be able to bring your arms all the way out to the side and over your head and touch your fingertips, pain-free. You should be able to reach halfway across your body. You should be able to extend back quite a ways, about 50 degrees, and then you should be able to rotate total 180 degrees, this arc of motion. And all that you should be able to do pain-free, unloaded, and then you should be able to also lift things up overhead, pain-free. So if I went through that list and you can't do those things, it's time to get into a program or to go see a PT. So talking about shoulder injuries, I got a chance to look at some of the data for the CU Boulder facility staff. And even though shoulder isn't the most commonly injured body part for you guys, it's up there. It's in like top 5. I think back is much more common. Finger lacerations, things like that are more common. But the shoulder is expensive, and it's also a very lengthy, it's a body part that takes a long time to rehab depending on the severity of your injury. So some of the mechanisms that are common to you guys are a fall, slip, or a trip. And I just crossed that one out right away because there's not a whole lot I can do to prevent a fall, slip, or a trip unless you need to work on your balance. You know, there are going to be situations where you fall into your arm, you fall into your shoulder, and then you could damage that shoulder joint. So I'm not going to talk about that one as much. But lifting and carrying, strain, and repetitive movements are the top 2 out of 3 ways that people injure their shoulders here. And there is some preventative things that we can do to make sure that as you're doing these repetitive movements, to make sure that as you're lifting, you're carrying, you're not going to injure yourself. Or if you do, or you're feeling pain, you're able to kind of stop and think through what should my next step be. So like I said, there's a high cost associated with shoulder injuries, especially if you need surgery. There's a lengthy recovery time and return to full work capacity. So for you guys, because you're active, you're doing different things every day, you know, probably your job doesn't look the same day to day because you kind of are problem solvers. You wouldn't be able to return to work after shoulder surgery for about 6 months, most likely. If you had a desk job, it'd probably be, you know, a month or so. But because you have to be able to use your limbs and really carry some heavy things, it's probably about 6 months before you can return to work. So that looks like a lot of PT. You're immobilized for a while, and then you have to work on gaining range of motion back, gaining strength, and then plus some, right? So that is not a fun thing. Some of you guys have probably had shoulder surgery in this room. It's not a super fun rehab, and so if you don't need surgery, so if you get to come see me early and we can just do conservative rehab, it's usually anywhere from 2 to 4 months. You know, maybe it means kind of pulling back on some of your work duties, but usually you can continue working as you're seeing me for rehab for the shoulder and kind of work back up into all of those work duties that maybe you're having trouble with. So I'm trying to really prop up seeking treatment early if you have pain. Okay, so some symptoms of dysfunction. So if I run through these and you're like, yes, that's me, it's time to go see a physical therapist. So if you have a painful arc of motion, so if as you're moving your arms up over your head, no pain here, oh yeah, I have pain right here, and then once I get up here, it goes away. That is definitely an indication to come see a PT. Or if you move your arms up overhead, no pain, no problem until I get way up here and then I feel a pinch pain. Or way over here and then I feel a pinch pain. Again, come on in and see me. So if you have pinching, sharp, any radiating pain down the arm, numbness, tingling down the arm, significant feeling of weakness from one side to another, it can either kind of happen gradually or pretty quickly. A feeling of instability, so especially as you're lifting heavy things over your head, if you notice like you're nervous, that you feel like your shoulder feels weird, it feels unsafe to be doing those things, and then just stiffness or an inability to lift your arm through full range. So if you can only get up to here and that's it, not enough for you guys, and it won't be enough for you in the long term. Maybe you can kind of compensate, use your back a little bit to lift some things up if you need to, but in the long run that's going to kind of just end up seeing me later on. Okay, so some common diagnoses that I see. So these first 2 I'm going to talk about, they're kind of overuse syndrome. So impingement syndrome and thoracic outlet syndrome. Impingement is that pain somewhere in this motion. You can repeat it. You know, every time I reach behind my car to go grab a bottle of water, every time I reach behind, I have pain. But it's not that bad, you know. It's just a little bit of pain, it goes away. And then thoracic outlet, yeah, sometimes I have pain, I have some numbness and tingling that goes down my arm. It kind of happens randomly or when I get up. So those kind of things where like you can repeat, you know that you have pain every time you do a certain movement. That's the perfect time to say, you know what, I think I hurt my shoulder, I need to go see a PT, I need to go in to see my primary care physician, because that's where I am most effective, and that's in the least amount of time, and that's where you guys will have the least pain for recovering from an injury. So if you get in when you just have a little bit of pain, some tightness, something going on, even if you feel like it's kind of silly to be going in to see a PT or someone to address that kind of thing, you know, your guys' temple, right? You need your bodies to be functioning at like 100% to be able to work pain-free. So I really encourage you to get in early. That's where I can give you a program to work on. We can quickly kind of identify if you have some weaknesses, if you have some motor control problems, and kind of get you back into full work duty pretty quickly. These next two, rotator cuff tear and slap tear, sometimes those two injuries can be rehabbed without surgery, but a lot of times you need surgery. So if you have a rotator cuff tear, that's one of those things that you can do just from repetitive movement. So if you're in that first category where you have every time you do this motion, you have pain, or every time you do this motion, you have pain, but at rest, no pain, so it's not a big deal. If you let that linger, that's one that can turn into a rotator cuff tear, where suddenly you don't just have pain, but you have weakness. I woke up, can't lift my arm over my head, or I have a lot of pain. So rotator cuff tear you can do just from repetitive overuse injuries that you're not really addressing, or it can be from that, a box fell off the shelf and I tried to catch it and my arm, it was too heavy to catch and my arm went down, or I tried to catch the garage door as it was coming down. Slap tear, that's a tear in your labrum, and most people say they have pain with this motion. So throwing, cocking your arm back, kind of doing any kind of this motion, lawnmower, anything like that is where you'll have pain there. So these two, or these three over here, AC joint sprain, if you can point to your shoulder and say, I have pain right here, and it pinches, and some points, that's probably an AC joint sprain. So these last three, you can obviously do them from a big injury. If you slip and fall on your shoulder, you can get a big tear like that. But they can also happen just from kind of repetitive use injuries where you're not really addressing pain or dysfunction early on. So those are the biggest ones I see. And frozen shoulder, we're not going to talk about. I shouldn't put that in there. Okay, so moving on to lifetime shoulder health. So if you guys are not performing some kind of exercise, some kind of daily mobility work, strength work within your work week or on the weekends, you really, really should be. If you want to stay in this career for a long time, if you really like this job, you have to take care of your body. You have to be, you have to be working at kind of a higher level than just your typical office worker would to kind of give you longevity in your career. So it can be as little, I swear, as like 20 minutes a week. So if you do 2 days of 10 minutes of stretching and a few exercises, it at least gives you a chance to check in with your body. How am I feeling this week? Oh, that's weird. That motion didn't hurt before, but now it's a little sore. I'm going to spend an extra 5 minutes working on some stretches. I'm going to spend an extra couple minutes like warming up for the day. Or I'm going to know that on some of the tasks that I usually do during my day, I might need a little extra help because I'm just feeling off my game. So part of it is just checking in with your body and like making sure nothing's going on, no big changes happen, and you don't really notice it until there's a big problem. All injuries are obviously not preventable, but seeking and addressing pain and dysfunction early really reduces your time to recovery, lost work time, and just kind of the pain and suffering that you guys have to go through when you're rehabbing a shoulder injury. So if you get in to see me early, it's a lot more comfortable for you, and it happens a lot faster. And then finally, I think I should emphasize this last point a little bit more, but just move smart, use your critical thinking skills, and if you feel you have an activity that you have to get done and it's not safe to do either alone or without additional equipment, just stop. Go talk to your manager, or your support staff, ask somebody for help. I think it's so easy to be like, oh, well, let's just try and get this done. And I would really encourage you, if you have any kind of holdups or thinking that an activity is unsafe, I would say go talk to Chris, go talk to one of your managers, because not getting something done that afternoon the way they wanted you to is much better than injuring yourself and being out of work for 6 months. I would encourage you to think of things like that, making sure you're kind of putting yourself first a little bit, making sure, feel like you're up to the task, and if you don't, go ask for some help, because in the long run, both you and you guys will be much happier if you kind of do that. Okay, and so with that, we're going to talk through just a few of my favorite exercises that I give I give these out to patients all the time, and I think they're wonderful kind of prehab exercises, so preventative exercises that you can kind of check in with your body and do a couple times a week and just see how everything's feeling. So I don't know if anyone wants to come up and demo these exercises for me. Anybody feeling like they have really good shoulder health and want to come up? Not today. No joiners in this group, all right. You want to come up? Come on up, thanks. Okay, so the first two I have up here are actually exercises. Hi, thanks, I'm Holly.
I actually have separated AC.
Oh, you have an AC joint separation? Okay, so you might have a little bit of pain with some of these, let me know. The first two that I'm going over are thoracic signs, so mid-back mobility exercises. Mid-back mobility and shoulder health is super important. If I'm hunched over like this and I try and lift my arms above my head, I can't get any farther than that. You really need to be able to extend through your mid-back, so that's why I put these two in here. So first one, let me know which side is AC joint.
This one.
Okay, so let's do this side. So I'm gonna have you go down onto your knees. Yep, and then you're gonna put left hand behind your head. Can you put that arm down? Yep, and you're gonna curl all the way under and then lift all the way back up like that. Does that feel okay? Does that hurt?
No.
Okay. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, weird. And go ahead again and lift back up. All right, so that's one good one. Flip over onto your back for me.
On my back.
Yep, onto your back. All right, you're gonna lay on your side so you can face the group or you can face me. You're gonna put both arms out forward and you're gonna open this top arm like it's a book. And you're gonna let your arm follow, let your head follow as well, and your back and rotate. Keep this right there, good. And repeat, ready? Go ahead again. How's that feel?
Like I'm stretching everything in my back.
Here we go. I love this one. Okay, good. All right, come on up for me. So those two I love. They just feel good. We're gonna do like 6 more. Okay, pec stretch. I can do them as well. I just like having volunteers because it's more fun. So pec stretch, we'll come over here onto the wall. These are super important. Almost no one stretches out their pecs and everyone has this like forward rounded shoulder posture. And so I promise you this one will also feel good. All right, so you're gonna find any wall. You're gonna put your hand on the wall like this. Try and get your arm, the whole thing on the wall. Okay, and then you're gonna turn your body away slowly until you feel a nice stretch. And then come back in. And then you can raise your arm up a little bit more too and do the same thing. There's my stretch right there. Does it feel good?
Yep.
Okay. The next one is just another pec stretch. You can do it in a corner. We don't have a good corner, so I won't show you, but it's really you're putting arms up into the wall and then you're just gonna bend your knee until you feel a nice stretch through your chest. Okay, all right. These two are mobility exercises for your shoulder. So the first one, ooh, it worked, is the robot. Sorry, it was a video. It didn't work last time. So you're gonna come over to the wall. Both arms are gonna go up like this. Good. You're gonna try and keep your shoulder blades on the wall as you do this exercise. And ready, let this arm come down this way. Keep your shoulder blades on the wall, and now you're gonna rotate and switch. Yes, just like that. Good, and switch. So he's got some pretty good rotation in here. I am lacking a little bit, so it's hard for me to get my hand down on the wall. So that's like an indicator like, I gotta do some more shoulder mobility work. Okay, the last one, wall angels for mobility. Both arms are gonna be up on the wall. You're gonna try and keep elbows and or hands on the wall as you reach up and overhead. Yes, see how far your elbows popped off the wall? Good, come on back down. So it's a great one to work on. And it gives you kind of a cue. You have a goal, right? You do this wall angel one until you can keep elbows and hands on the wall. And then you're done with it. Okay. You don't have to get down and demonstrate these if you don't want. I can just do them in standing. But these are some strengthening exercises for the shoulder. The first 3, I's, Y's, and T's, you're literally making an I, a Y, and a T with your body. So you can do it in standing. I prefer doing them laying face down with a rolled up towel underneath your forehead. And this This sequence of exercises is fantastic because it kind of works on all of the muscles that attach to your shoulder blades that are responsible for allowing your shoulder blade to rotate as you lift your arm up overhead. So if you guys hold a lot of tension up here, if you feel like your traps are always tight, you're always tense up here, these are great exercises for you to do because it kind of can force this upper trap muscle to relax a little bit and wake up some of your mid and lower back muscles and kind of have them do their job a little bit more. And then this side lying external rotation exercise, you can do it without a dumbbell or you can do it with a dumbbell. It's a fantastic exercise. I swear, if you're in PT, you will get it every single time you go for shoulder. It's another one that kind of works on inhibiting or calming down some muscles that kind of tense up, especially if you have shoulder pain, and work on the muscles that need to be giving you more and doing more for you. So I think all of these are fantastic exercises to start with. If you try some of them and notice that you have pain or weakness or are just not able to do them at all, you can come on in and see me. We actually have, thank you so much, by the way. We're done. Nice to meet you. Give it up. We have free 15-minute screens, so if you feel like, oh, I have a little bit of shoulder pain, but I don't feel like going to PT, I don't feel like going through that whole process, you can come in and see us. I watch you move for 15 minutes, and I can give you some more specific exercises that you can try just at home for a couple weeks. Call you after like 3 weeks, hey, how's your shoulder feeling? How are those exercises going? And we can do things a little bit like that. It's a great tool because I can get some eyes on you and either say, oh yeah, you should be fine, you just need to work on a couple of things, or, oh yeah, no, you need to be in PT. So it's a good tool for me to say, you know what, you really need to rehab, or I think you're okay, here's some things to work on. So yeah, that's all I have. So if you guys have any questions for me, bring them on. Yeah, that's it. Oh, that's what I just did, I think. That's what I was trying to tell you about, is a free screen. So it's a half-an-hour appointment, but you don't have to pay anything. It doesn't go through insurance, and I just get to give you some good exercises to work on. Thank you.
That was good.
You got better. Thanks, Chris.
All right, now we're actually officially finished. Remember, those are free screenings. If you do want, I have the coupon things up here. You can come get them from me. I have some of Holly's cards. So if you want a free screening, come pick one of those up, and you can go down to Peak Form and get that done. Other than that, you guys are done for another year. Another year, we're done. Thank you.